Hey everyone, today we are making this big beautiful fringe necklace and an understated pair of earrings to match. For this project, I have a mix of 11-aught Miyuki rocailles seed beads. These are from a mix called Passionflower, which I got from Barrel of Beads. I also have a 7-inch piece of sterling silver 18 gauge wire, half hard. A couple of 2-inch head pins, a pair of French hooks, 4 wire guards, a couple of jump rings, a 2-inch extension chain, and you'll need a 12mm lobster clasp. I'm going to be using polyester thread conditioned with beeswax. And I have about 2 arms length of it threaded onto my big eye needle. We're also going to need a sharp pair of scissors and a pair of needle nose pliers. We will also be having the guest appearance of a pair of round nose pliers and a pair of wire cutters. And this part's optional, but I've got my handy dandy jump ring opener that I'll be using today also. So I'm going to start off with my piece of sterling silver wire, and it already has this nice smile-shaped curve from coming off the roll. So I'm not going to straighten it out, I'm going to leave it in this shape because it's going to be the perfect shape for our fringe necklace. I'm just going to take my round nose pliers and bend each end upward to form a little loop. These loops are where we will attach our strands later on. But first we're going to start attaching our fringe. I'm going to tie the end of my thread around my silver wire, leaving a couple inches for a tail. I'm going to double knot it to make sure that it's nice and secure. I'm going to pick up 2 beads, go under our wire, and then go back up through the second bead. I'm going to go down through my first bead and then up through my second bead again, and that will force our beads to lay flush with the wire. I'm going to pick up another bead, go under the wire, and then back up through that bead. And this is just like doing brick stitch, but instead of going through a thread bridge, we're going under this wire. We're going to keep adding single beads by brick stitch until we have 53 beads across on our silver wire. It should look a little something like this, and before we start moving on to putting on our fringe, we're going to make sure these last 2 beads are nice, tight, and secure. So I'm going to take my needle through the thread bridge of the last 2 beads. I'm going to pull my thread through until there's just a little loop there, and then I'm going to put my needle back through the loop and pull it nice and taut. I'm going to do it a second time, and I like to give it a little wiggle back and forth when I'm tightening up so that my knot can work its way inside the bead so no one can see it. I'm going to turn my frown upside down so that we can start working on our fringe. I'm going to keep this end bead as a single bead without a fringe attached, so since I just put that knot into our last 2 beads, I can go right back through that end bead and down through the bead next to it. So for our first fringe, I'm only picking up 2 beads. I'm going to pull them up to the other beads, skip the bottom bead, and go back up through the top 2 beads. And there we have our first little baby fringe. So we're going to go back down through the bead to the left of us, and each fringe I'm going to be increasing by 2 beads, so this fringe is going to have 4 beads on it. Just like before, I skipped the bottom bead and then go up through the rest of the beads. And we're going to keep adding fringes in the same way, increasing each fringe by 2 beads until we get to the center bead. And once we start getting more and more beads on each fringe, I like to lay the fringe down next to all the other fringes before I go back up through it to make sure I haven't miscounted or something. So you can see I have this nice even line so that I can be sure that I have the right number of beads on each fringe. It's always easier to fix a mistake like that before you go back up through the beads. And after each fringe I like to smack them around a little bit so that I can make sure that they're still moving freely and my fringes aren't getting pulled too tight. Now, I have gotten to the stage where my thread is a little too short to work with, so I'm just going to add another 2 arms length of thread by holding the 2 ends even with each other and quickly tying them together in a double knot. I am going to pull it really tight and then trim a little bit of the excess end. Now we are ready to go and put more fringes on. Once I make it to the middle, which should be bead number 27, I'm going to start decreasing my fringes after that by 2 beads each. That way, once we've put on all of our fringes, we'll have this really nice V shape to the end of the fringes. And about 3 years later, I have finally finished all of my fringes, and my working thread and my end thread are coming out the same area. I'm going to tie the 2 ends together using a very loose overhand knot, a second loose overhand knot, and then 1/3 really tight overhand knot. And this will make sure that we don't accidentally tighten up our fringes while we're tying the ends together. I'm going to work both the ends through this last fringe before I snip them off. So there we have our fringy part of the necklace, and now we can move on to putting on the 2 necklace strands. I've got another length of thread here, and I've chosen a black bead to put on as a stop bead. So I'm going to go through the bead once, and then go through it in the same direction a second time, and then go through it a third time. I like to choose matte Delica beads as my stop bead because they're just a lot more grippy than a shiny bead or a rocaille bead. And then I'm just going to start picking up beads and pulling them down to my stop bead until the strand is the length that I desire it to be. And now that I have it the length that I want, I'm going to add a wire guard to the end of this strand. I'm going to pinch my wire guard closed, and then I'm going to go up through one leg of the wire guard and then down through the other. Then I'm going to go through and snake my way all the way through all the beads to the other end of the strand. And once you get there, just make sure you don't go through your stop bead. I'm going to work my way again through the entire strand. Just make sure that you don't go through your stop bead. I'm going to go around this wire guard a second time and then back through the strand again so that we meet up with our stop bead. Once again, make sure you don't go through the stop bead. And it's really important to go around this wire guard also. And now that our working thread and our tail thread are coming out of the same area, I can go ahead and take off my stop bead and tie the 2 ends together. So I'm going to tie a loose overhand knot, a second loose overhand knot, and then a really tight overhand knot. Then I'm going to work the 2 ends through the necklace strand a little ways before I snip them off. So there we have one of our strands made, and I'm ready to attach it to one of the loops of our little smile wire. So I'm just going to take my pair of needle nose pliers and open up the loop to the side a little bit, slide my wire guard on there, and close it back up. Now I've made a matching strand exactly the same length as the first and attached it to the other side. So I'm opening up a 4mm jump ring, and I'm going to slide the wire guard from the end of my strand of necklace onto the jump ring. And I'm right-handed, so I'm going to add the lobster claw to this right-hand side of the necklace. We're going to do the same thing for the other strand, but I'm going to put an extension chain on this side. And there we have our finished fringe necklace. Very quickly, I'm going to make these little dainty, understated earrings to go with our big showy necklace. I've got my 2-inch head pin here, and I'm going to start adding beads in groups of 3, starting from the more purple toned beads and going to the more pink toned beads. And once I've got all the beads I want on there, I'm going to take my round nose pliers and bend the top of the wire off to the side. Just like that. Now I can bend the rest of the wire around my round nose pliers to make a loop. And once I get a basic loop shape, I can snip the excess end of the wire off. And now that the excess is out of the way, we can close our loop up the rest of the way. I'm going to open up one of our French hooks and slide the loop of the head pin onto it and close it right back up. And there you have your cute little understated earring. You just gotta do that one more time to get its mate, and then you're all ready to go. Hey, thanks for watching. If you like this tutorial and want to see more like it, don't forget to throw me a morsel of a subscribe, a crumb of a like, or a tasty tidbit of a comment. Okay, bye!